Good morning. It's a great time to get out in the garden at the moment with your families. In fact, so many people are getting out in the garden that the seedlings are often sold out and you can't actually get any.
Yeah, come on, the people. I have a little tickle. Okay, a bit of tickle. Yeah, because can I plant this plant? Yeah, I'm going to hold for you. Can I plant this plant over here or over there or over there? You want to plant what about just here? There's no worms in that hole. I will find some worms. Yeah. Another worm. Hi. Alright.
It's a wonderful thing to be in the garden with your children, with your family. Somehow when you slow down and really start to look at things, you see a whole lot more. You're in there looking at the worms and the frogs and the things in the garden and what the bees are up to. It's really challenging times at the moment, and even just working from home and being at home, it has its own challenges. But for some people it's far more extreme than that, with the loss of family members, with the loss of jobs, with the loss of companies. And it's certainly a time in history that will be remembered and be shaped in the history books. So my heart goes out to all of those that are affected with losses of both family members and incomes and all of that. The beautiful thing about being at home with your family is being able to get in the garden, and we're lucky to have a nice garden here outside our house, and we're definitely been out here giving it some love, getting some things growing, getting out here with the kids. So let us know what's going on in your garden, and also if you've got questions, whether it's about bees or gardening or whatever, put it in the comments below and we'll get to answering those as best we can. Also, if you want to hashtag @FlowHiveHome, let us know what's going on in your home, whether you're in the garden or whether you're doing something else with your children. It's a time when there's a lot of families at home, and there's a lot of gardening going on, but also a lot of beekeeping. It's been amazing to have so much support from people all around the world. In fact, we're actually almost sold out on quite a lot of our hives. So if you do want to get hives for your home, it is a great little project, but you will have to just check to see if we've still got stock. We are still shipping around the world, and if you do have sort of shipping lockdowns in your area, then get in touch, but most places, I believe, are still open. So it's really nice to be picking and eating from the garden too. Sometimes when we're so busy, we don't actually get a chance to grow some salad greens and get them in our salad each night. And our honey jar's getting a little bit low, so we might just harvest a little bit of honey while we're here. Meanwhile, if you've got any questions, put it in the comments below and we'll get to answering them. Charlie's a bit of a whiz at harvesting honey, so maybe you can do that. Here we go. Okay. So he's just turned the handle. What's happened is channels are forming inside the comb to allow the honey to flow down and out. That's it. Go again. It can be quite firm sometimes. Here's the honey coming out now. There we go. Into the jar. The honey pot's getting a little low inside. It's certainly nice to be able to stroll out here into the garden and get some more.
It's going to take a long time for this jar to fill up.
Beautiful. Honey's streaming into the jar now. If you've got questions, put it in the comments below about bees, flow hive, or what's going on
Daddy,
in your garden. If you want to tell us what's going on in your garden, hashtag flowhivehome, or even put it in the comments below. Let us know what's going on for you with your family at home. It is a challenging time where we are at home, and we're at home for good reason. It's
Daddy.
it's a small thing that we can do to save lives, is stay home and make sure our hands are really clean. Only go out when absolutely necessary. Yep.
Is that our jar?
That is our jar.
Are we gonna have that honey?
We're going to have that honey. Although there might be some extra left over we can share with the neighbours. It's an old olive jar. It's a nice one, isn't it? It looks like a Pooh Bear honey pot.
It's gonna be filled with honey.
It is.
So it will be a Pooh Bear honey pot.
There will be a Pooh Bear honey pot.
I am gonna eat some honey.
Maybe just wash your hands first. And get the hose. Here we go. You can wash your hands under there. And then it's a really good idea to wash your hands all throughout the day at the moment. Remembering that if we can keep our hands clean, limit the spread, then we will save lives. Any questions, put them in the comments below and we'll get to answering them. Beautiful. Mella's, our daughter here, is doing a great job in the garden, and it's such a good thing just to have our children really learning where food's coming from. It's a really important part, I think, and it's something that humans really crave, is really getting back to the garden. Paddle pops are a good thing, isn't it? If you don't want to stick your fingers in there, or spoons like this, you can taste some honey. Is it yummy?
Yeah.
Should we look in this window, Cedar?
Yeah, let's have a look in here. You want to open the window, Charlie? Okay, so
Rachel is asking, how often can you harvest honey?
So it really depends. Sometimes in the springtime when there's flowers dripping with nectar and you've got a really strong colony, you can harvest all of the honey and they'll fill it up in a week or two. But that's an extreme situation. When it's like that, it's very exciting. But you also get other times of year where it's a lot slower, and sometimes you go 6 months without any honey at all. And in some cases, you won't get any honey that season simply because the rains didn't come and the flowers didn't flower, or maybe there was bushfires that burnt all the forest around you, or all sorts of things can happen. So it's a matter of a strong colony lining up with a good nectar flow from the flowers.
We've got someone asking, how do you buy bees for your flow hive?
So bees are available in most areas, and you need to get online, look up your bee breeders, and they come in either a package, which is basically an artificial swarm. They shake a bunch of bees out of a box, put a queen in there in a little cage and some syrup, and that will actually ship in the mail, which is extraordinary. You get some funny looks from your delivery service. But another way is you can order what's called a nucleus, and that's probably the easiest way, and that's a going little hive, and you often have to go and pick that up from your beekeeping supplier. And it's like a little mini beehive. Oh, thank you.
That's my spoon.
Oh, okay. I thought you were giving it to me to eat, honey.
No, that's mine.
Okay. Certainly children really love honey. But yeah, I'd recommend starting with a nucleus. That's the easy way. There's also, you can start with what's called a split, where you just take some frames out of another hive and put it into your one. You can either let the bees raise their own queen or order a special queen if you want some nice calm genetics in your backyard. Now, you can also catch a swarm, which is a fun thing to do. We've got videos showing you how to do that.
Stop, Mella.
Marie is saying, I haven't harvested any honey yet. Don't you cover your jar? Or when should you cover your jar to prevent the bees getting in it?
Okay, that is a great question. So the question is, we're leaving the honey jar open here, but sometimes you'll find the bees are hungry and they will come for the honey. And if you find them doing that, certainly you do want to cover the jar and make sure that bees aren't going to fly in there. If one flies in there, you can just fish it out, put it back on the landing board, it's no big deal. But if you're in a situation where the bees are very hungry, or perhaps they've gotten into a taste for honey and starting to rob other hives, then you can get hundreds coming for the honey. So if you do see that, certainly cover it up straight away, or you can cover it up from the beginning if you want to. If you're looking in this window, it's quite interesting because this hive has no excluder. Some queens you can run with no excluder and that she won't lay in the flow frames. So you'll notice some bigger bees here, which are the drones, because they're free to roam around the hive with no excluder. So you can see one right over here, just on the tip of where my finger is. They're a bigger bee and their eyes touch in the middle.
Oh yeah, I can see the black eye bee.
It's very cool. So that's a boy bee. They don't do chores inside the hive. They just fly off periodically, hoping to mate with the queen in a drone congregation area. The drones will hang out in an area, a bit like males do in general, and wait for a queen to fly by. Okay.
Cedar, Michael's asking, how much honey would you get from one full frame?
So one full frame gets you about 2 litres of honey, which is close to 3 kilograms of honey. It will vary a little bit depending on how far the bees have drawn their capping, their wax out from the flow frames. So it'll vary a little bit, but you'll get, this is one frame here, and where it's still flowing, and we're probably going to need another jar. It's an extraordinary amount of honey you get from a single flow frame. Keep the questions coming, and also let us know what's going on in your garden at home. So let us know by hashtagging FlowHiveHome or by putting it in the comments below. It's a time when there's so many of us at home in our gardens looking for activities to do. Also, I should mention tomorrow, because there's so many people at home, we're going to be doing a special kids Q&A. So if you've got children at home, then the same time tomorrow we will be doing a special Q&A for kids about bees. So that should be entertaining. Tune in for that. Help them write questions. You can send questions in early to us by putting them in the comments below, or just by emailing them in, or live tomorrow on the day as the kids come up with questions. Just punch them in the comments and we'll get to answering those. So make sure you tune in with your family tomorrow, same time.
Daddy, I want to talk now.
You want to talk? Okay, Charlie wants to talk. Have you got a question? Yeah, what's your question?
Mint,
Yeah.
if you put it under honey and let the honey drip onto the mint and then you eat it, it's really good.
Ah, beautiful. Do you want to show people that? It's actually Gary Megan, a chef called Gary Megan. He's was harvesting honey with us, and he started getting things out of the garden and putting them under the honey and talking about all the flavour combinations. It was quite a thing, and since then we've been getting things out of the garden and trying them with the different honeys that come in, because you get these different flavours in different frames depending on what the bees are foraging on. Some go beautifully with mint, and others you might like to eat with rocket or basil. Have you tried basil, Charlie? You want to try the basil?
I haven't tried basil.
Have a go. Basil and honey is another thing. But Gary Megan from MasterChef, he got us doing that. I hadn't really thought of trying the honey flavours with all of the things in the garden, but of course honey's a beautiful flavour that can accentuate flavours. And we'll see what Charlie thinks of basil honey. What do you think? Is it good? Or do you like the mint better? Like both. Okay, good. Good, good. Bees go crazy for basil flowers and tulsi flowers in your garden. Here's one we're just about to plant. If you are planning to plant some bee forage, don't forget to plant tulsi basil. The bees just go crazy for these little flowers, and the native bees as well. We have these amazing blue banded bees in this area that really love going for the tulsi flowers. Any questions, put it in the comments below.
Next question is, will I have to requeen if I have a wild colony?
So the question is no. But the reasons why you requeen is if, say, the hive is getting either a bit weak and slow and they're not really managing to get productive and they need a more virile laying queen, or if the colony is showing aggression and that's not suitable for where you've situated your hive. So this hive here is nice and calm. It's one that I'm happy for my kids to be around and be near. But I've certainly got hives down in the paddock here that are a bit more aggressive, and they aren't ones that I'd put right by the house this close. So just like dogs, for instance, there's different genetic traits that make them more or less aggressive. So you may choose to requeen if your hive is showing those aggressive traits and starting to chase people and so on. Sometimes that can be quite a nuisance.
Cedar, Brad Pitt has a hive in Victoria and he has a small amount of water and mould pooling in the bottom of his bottom tray. He's wondering if that's a normal thing.
Okay, that is a normal thing. The tray in the bottom will fill up with things because we've got a screened bottom board. Then bits of wax and things will fall through there, and even if you've got strong rain, it can drive in the entrance and you can get that dripping into that tray at the bottom. And it's just a case of cleaning it out every now and then. If you don't want to go through that process of cleaning it out and you're not really using the tray, you can turn it upside down and water won't collect in it. Or you can leave it out altogether and just leave it a screened open bottom board. If you're using it to catch beetles, however, you'll need to periodically change the oil you put in there to catch those beetles in the bottom tray. So can't quite get to it right now because we've got this shelf in the way, but under here is a ventilated cover you can undo, and there's a nice tray that you can slide out and use to catch pests like the hive beetle and also count things like varroa mite.
Do bees keep the inside of the hive clean?
Bees do keep the inside of the hive clean. They are amazing at keeping things clean, and I wouldn't recommend you do this, but even if you put a mouldy frame in there, they'll clean it all up and get it all into a good state for storing honey again. Now, different bees have it's called a hygienic trait. So some bees will be more hygienic than others. Some bees will even be better at managing pests than others. Some bees, if you've got the varroa mite, say if you're in one of the other continents in the world, some bees will actually get on there and start chewing the legs off those mites. So it's really interesting to see what your hive's doing, because you just might notice a trait that nobody else has got, and if you then take a split from that hive, you could keep those genetics going. And some people have done amazing jobs breeding things like survivor bees. There's the Weaver family in the US has done a great job of breeding bees to the point where they are better at managing, say, the varroa mites. There's a lot of people experimenting, and of course if you can get the bees to look after the issues that come along in hives, then that's the best thing. It's far better than trying to catch and treat all the pests. However, it's a much debated topic, and we don't have the varroa mites here, so I can't particularly speak to it, but there's different schools of thought on whether to go down the route of breeding for resistance to the mites, or whether to use treatments to lessen those mites, and some people use a combination of both as well. If you're in Australia, you don't have to worry about them at the moment. It is said that one day they will come to our shores.
Ian's asking, if a flow frame looks mostly capped off but has a few open cells, do you have to worry about fermentation? And how long does the frame have how full does the frame have to be to harvest?
So the frame, generally, a rule of thumb in beekeeping and conventional beekeeping is if the frames are 70% capped, they'll take it now and take it for harvesting. So you don't have to have it all capped, but what you're looking for is a moisture content below, say, 20%. When it's 20% or above, you're going to get issues of fermentation happening. If you've harvested early and the honey is quite runny, it just means you need to eat that honey before it starts turning into honey mead. So it's not the end of the world. You can still enjoy that honey. If you keep it in the fridge, it'll last a bit longer. If your honey is nice and thick though, and you've harvested it when it's mostly capped, you'll find it'll keep on the shelf if the lid's tightly on the jar indefinitely. So that's a wonderful thing about honey.
Cedar, we've got someone asking, what kind of hive would you recommend for a colder climate like the southern region of Canada?
Sorry, once again.
We've got someone asking, what kind of hive would you recommend for a colder climate like the southern region of Canada?
Okay, southern region of Canada. There is a lot of people keeping flow hives in Canada, and what tends to be more popular is the bigger size we have. This one here has the 6 flow frames in it, so it's called the flow frame 7, which is about this much wider with another flow frame and 2 more frames in the brood box. So in the brood box you have conventional wood frames that the bees draw their wax in, and having a couple more is helpful for getting bees to survive the winter. You've got a little more honey storage in your hive, you've got a bigger hive, but also when the flowers come on, the season tends to be compressed, so you might get 3 months of good honey flow in the rest of the year. The rest of the year not much at all. So because it comes on so thick and fast, a bigger hive also lets your bees expand more quickly, build up enough numbers to really take advantage of the honey flow. So flow frame 7 would be the one to go for in those colder regions.
Robert is asking, should I have my garden ready before buying the Flow Hive 2? Right now I have a large yard with nothing but grass. Should I plant my flowers first?
Planting flowers for the European honeybee will do a little bit, but it won't do a whole lot. These bees forage up to a 10-kilometre radius, 6 miles, so that's a long way, and they need a lot of flowers. A hive like this could visit 50 million flowers in a day. So planting a few flowers around your hive won't really change your honey crop, but what you are doing is providing an ecosystem for a whole lot of pollinators to then come into your garden. And you'll notice some of the native bees, some of the native pollinators actually have a very small range of only a couple of 100 metres. So planting flowers in your garden is great, and it provides stepping stones for some of those species who only have a really short range. So it's not necessary for the European honeybee, Apis mellifera, to have flowers close at hand. They fly a long way and they'll go and get them. So go for it, get your hive going, and you can plant flowers around them or not. It is a wonderful thing to be out in the garden planting flowers, but it's not essential.
Luke from northeast Victoria did an inspection yesterday and found bees had made comb on the top of all the frames. Is this because they are overcrowded?
Say once more.
Luke from northeast Victoria did an inspection yesterday and found bees had made comb on top of the frames. Is this because they are overcrowded?
Possibly. Now, if there's limited space above the flow frames here because there's an inner cover inside, which you can see just here. So there's an inner cover there. So if you've got your inner cover in place, there shouldn't be a whole lot of space for your bees to make comb above the flow frames, unless you've left the plug out, in which case they will build a whole lot of comb under the lid. So basically bees will build comb where there is space, but if the space is limited they can't build very much and they're less likely to. So we've tried to space things so the bees won't build a whole lot of comb above the flow frames, but bees will be bees and sometimes they do. If you've left gaps in your hive, if you've left frames out, they will definitely build comb in those spaces. but it's normal to have a little bit of comb in any gaps around the hive as the bees attempt to maximise their space that they have.
Pretty good.
Get too much. Stone, I'm making the honey minty flavour.
Oh, yum.
I didn't get much.
Pretty Good Honey is asking, if I put a spigot on the flow hive tube and turn it off while I switch jars, will it cause an overflow issue inside the hive?
You could certainly do that, but you wouldn't want to turn it off for very long. So as you can see, the honey does build up in the tube sometimes, and if it's really flowing and you suddenly turn it off to swap jars, then yes, it could build up and spill inside the hive. So if you are planning to do that, then only do it temporarily. You can have some honey. You can have some honey on your spoon.
Cedar, Chet is interested to
Dad,
know,
how
once
do
you
turn the
harvest,
hive off?
So we'll put this key in the top position and turn it again. We could do that now if you like.
To turn it off?
Yeah, so turn that key again like this. Now slide it in the top slot.
Top slot and not turning it yet.
Push it all the way till you feel the clunk at the back. Yeah.
There's some mint in it.
Now you can turn it. And what that's done is reset the comb into the original position where the bees can then wax it all up, rebuild those cells, and start the whole process again of putting the nectar in and dewatering it to the point where the bees are happy that it will store underneath their honeycomb capping.
Chet is asking, once you harvest, how do the bees know the cells are empty if they are still capped?
Okay, that's a great question, and it was a bit of a wild card. I tested so many things over a decade-long time of inventing the flow hive with my father, and at one point I was trying to move the capping section away inside the hive with diaphragms and things, and I was experimenting with silicon surfaces that I was hoping the bees wouldn't attach their capping to, and all of it failed and all of it didn't work. But in the end, what we found was that the bees would know when the honey drained out from beneath their feet. So often you can watch it through this side window. You harvest the honey, the bees have their capping that they're standing on, and within a few hours they know that the honey's disappeared from beneath their feet. And they're starting to chew that capping off and then fix up those cells, and the whole process starts again. So I guess it's like a drum skin under their feet when it's empty, so they certainly know. And I imagine in nature that would happen sometimes. Let's say a bear came along and messed the hive, there'd be a whole lot of honey that would actually drain out of cells and a whole lot of capping that'd be left intact without the honey inside. So the bees have evolved to know when their honey frames are full and capped, or whether there's been a leak in them. Great question.
Mary has an excellent tip to share with everyone. She's saying that a few sprigs of old-fashioned mint is a great ant deterrent in the roof of your flow hive.
Oh, that's interesting. A few sprigs of mint in the roof deters ants. I'm going to have to try that. That's amazing. We've certainly got a lot of mint around here. So if you look in the side of this hive, you can see there's nectar glistening, showing there's some nectar coming in, which is good, but it has been a bit of a slow year. We had all of those fires, and then we had flood, and typically this time of year there's not that many flowers, so unless the paperbarks burst into bloom again, the bees are a little bit hungry at the moment, so we're just going to take one frame of honey and leave the rest for the bees.
We've got someone asking whether or not you should leave the inner cap on your inner cover on or off.
Okay, I tend to leave that that plug in. So that they're talking about this plug here. If you look in the top of the hive, you see there's a plug here. If you pull that out, the bees can freely access the roof area. I won't pull it out now because I don't have my bee suit on. And that means they will actually build comb up in the roof cavity, which is fun for a while, and you can take that comb to parties and things and enjoy eating it. But it's also a bit of a mess to clean up, so I tend to leave that cap in and just leave that as the bees, so the bees can store their honey down here and not in the roof cavity.
Sam's asking, is it safe to repaint your hive once the bees have moved in?
So, like anything in beekeeping, make sure you protect yourself. Wear your bee suit, wear your gloves. Some hives can be aggressive, and so I'm going to leave it up to you there. But we have first aid information on our web pages. You can follow the links at the bottom. Having said that, I do. If I've got a bit of oil on a rag, I can wipe it on here and just touch it up a bit if it starts looking a bit dry. So I certainly do reapply finishes to the hive with the bees in there. Yum. So we've got time for a couple more questions. It's been a wonderful thing to be at home in this time with the kids and get out in the garden, but of course it's a very challenging time, and my heart certainly goes out to those people who have lost loved ones and also incomes, jobs, companies, etc. It's uncharted territory we're in now, and it's certainly challenging for most of us and very challenging for some of us. But getting out in the garden is a way to connect back in with what's important and enjoy growing some of your own food. We've got time for a couple more questions, and tune in tomorrow 10 a.m. for a special edition Kids Facebook Live Q&A. So if you've got children at home, it could be a good time to get them on there. If they've got questions, you can put them in the comments below now, or you can write them as they say them tomorrow in the live Q&A.
Danny is asking, is there any disadvantage to marking a queen?
There, as far as I know, there isn't any disadvantage to marking a queen. So what Danny's talking about there is putting a dot on the thorax of a bee. So there's a shiny plate here on the bee, and putting a little paint mark on it doesn't seem to have any adverse effects in beekeeping. It's very common for queen breeders to do that, and you can experiment with paint marking. It does take a little bit to get used to. There's all sorts of gadgets you can get that help you hold the bee while you add a little dot, and it does help you find the queen. I personally don't bother. I enjoy trying to find the queen in the hive, but it can help you if you're getting more scientific about it and wanting to know how old your queen is. Queen breeders will often use a colour to represent a year, and therefore you can look in there and go, wow, that queen is 5 years old, amazing. Or know when your queen has been superseded. So there's some information you can gather by paint marking your queen. Time for another question, and make sure you tune in tomorrow if you've got children for the special edition Facebook Live Q&A for kids.
Jared says, we back onto a bunch of bushland in North Queensland. Would that be suitable enough for the bees to maintain a happy life?
So North Queensland, fantastic place to keep bees. You've got a lot of forest, and as you said, there's plenty of forest there behind you, and you've also in a tropical region. You'll find that your bees will produce honey all year round. It'll ebb and flow, but you don't have those long cold winters to deal with. So your hive can stay as is all year round if your bees are happy and healthy. Having said that, urban environments are also great for beekeeping. People plant all sorts of things in urban areas, and you get really interesting honey flavours from the urban environment. So you don't necessarily have to have forest nearby to keep bees. In fact, there's people
Daddy, I've got a question.
keeping bees. Yep.
the queen has a darker plate than the worker bees.
Yeah, that's true. Why does she have that, do you think? So what happens is that plate on the back of the thorax starts off with all the worker bees, and you can see through this window, and there's a bit of hair on it. Now, because the queen lasts a lot longer than the worker bees, the hair wears off the queen's thorax, so that back plate gets nice and shiny. So Charlie's one way he finds it easier to spot the queen is looking for that shiny back plate compared to the fuzzy one of a fresh new bee or a worker bee. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to tune in next week for the tomorrow, same time tomorrow, Facebook Live, special edition for kids. If you've got kids at home, then think up some questions or just put them in the comments as we're going live tomorrow. So look forward to seeing you then, and good luck with everything in this time. Stay home, stay safe. Let's do what we can. Keep your hands clean, limit going out, and limit spreading the virus, because that saves lives. Thank you very much for watching.